Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Ben on Sports. This episode is on our weekly NASCAR series, my weekly NASCAR series. Um, the end of the round of 16 of playoffs. Who's going to get cut? Who's going to advance? Let's find out. Um, let's get into the episode. Going into the Bristol night race, one of the most famous races in NASCAR history. Um, if they ever were going to add a fifth crown jewel, I think the Bristol night race should be the first race they consider. But let's get into some of these storylines. Denny Hamlin wins another race, puts him in the lead for the most races won this season, wins at Gateway. Toyota with another 1-2 finish, and Denny Hamlin clinches his way into the round of 12. And a lot of things were being said in the press, but is this finally the year that he wins it all? It's well known that he's retiring soon, or at least he should be retiring soon. He's 44 years old, doesn't have that much time left. All-time driver resume, he's assuming he continues this level, should be top 10 in wins easily. I mean, he's almost to 60, he's at 59. 60 would tie him for Kevin Harvick at that mark. Has the resume, everything but the championship. Probably would have won a championship by now if it wasn't for the playoff format. But yeah, is this finally the year Denny Hamlin wins it? This is a little bit more wide open. There's a lot less domination of cars, or like a lot less drivers dominating races. Maybe it's finally time Denny gets that championship after all. Toyota dominance. They've won both playoff races. They've had a 1-2 in both playoff races. Obviously, the first one they went 1-2-3-4 at Darlington. Yet they only went 1-2 here, but they had a lot more cars at the front. And they had the majority of the fastest cars at Gateway, at least in my opinion. Toyota's been dominant the first two races. Let's see if it continues into Bristol, a place where at least Joe Gibbs Racing has been fast. And then speaking of Toyota dominance, give it up for Legacy Motor Club. Both drivers getting top 10 finishes the first two races of the playoffs. Neither one of them made it, but get credit to Legacy for showing some speed here late in the year. They've been fast, occasionally at some other tracks, but two races in a row, one at Darlington, one at Gateway. Maybe Legacy is building on something for next season. They certainly are finding speed on more tracks than I think people would expect them to have speed on. Four playoff drivers in trouble below the cut line. I'm not going to talk too much about this because obviously I will be showing it later, but can any of them win their way in? Excuse me, sorry. Some of them, somebody like Josh Berry has to win his way in, and maybe even Alex Bowman. Austin Dillon and Shane Van Gisbergen can maybe point their way in, but there's four drivers are getting cut, four are below the cut line. Can any of them win their way in? I don't know. I think the only one that's good that historically in the next gen has ever had the speed to win this race is Alex Bowman, in terms of the drivers below the cut line. But we'll see, and I'll get into some of that a little bit later. Trackhouse going off course. It caused, if you don't know what I'm talking about, after the race was over at Gateway, Trackhouse was coming down the pitway entry and was driving through the grass. Both Ross Chastain and Shane Van Gisbergen, their two playoff drivers. I wonder if anything was going on there. NASCAR put out a statement saying that, reminding teams of some of the rules. I don't think any punishment should come down unless you have bona fide evidence of anything going on, which I don't think they do. But, I do think the fact that NASCAR put out that statement probably says a little bit. Trackhouse obviously needs to find some better speed for their playoff drivers. Maybe they were trying to do something. But as the old NASCAR statement goes, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. And Larson runs out of talent. This is becoming an unfortunate theme. Kyle Larson, a lot of people believe he's the best driver in NASCAR and supposed to be one of the best race car drivers in the world. Which, he's won championships in different series. He wins races in different series. I don't know if I'd put him ahead. I believe they're friends, but, two guys, somebody that has a lot in common with him in Tony Stewart. But, it's concerning when you have somebody as talented as Kyle Larson with the backing of how good of a driver he is, like that kind of thing, who just continuously makes dumb mistakes that get other people in trouble. Ryan Blaney has every reason to get mad. Now, Ryan Blaney isn't someone that he'll get mad over the radio, but he's not somebody that's going to necessarily exact revenge on the racetrack. It's not Ryan Blaney. Maybe one day he will. Um, Ryan Blaney had every reason to get mad about Kyle Larson just spinning him out for no reason. Kyle Larson getting into a corner too hard. That's the kind of stuff that Kyle Larson needs to clean up because it's happening too often. I know you're running on the ragged edge. I know that you're trying to get everything you can out of the car, but you got to stop taking out people. It's becoming too frequent of a problem, in my opinion. And what's the new tire compound going to be like this week? Obviously, there's I've heard different rumors, some from drivers, some from NASCAR media. The biggest one getting circulated is that Denny Hamlin said the new tire compound they're testing out for this race just like absolutely got shredded super fast when they were testing it. Um, so we'll see. Maybe the tire fall off will help this be an interesting race. If there is a lot of tire fall off, I know who I'm going to pick to win it. But what will the new tire compound look like this week? Not a lot of testing, not a lot of information is really out on it, in my opinion, and that could lead to absolute chaos. And it could turn into a battle, just survival of the fittest. Who can make adjustments the best. History at Bristol in the next gen. Remember, while we are on 2 Bristol races, are currently at the start of the next gen, it was not 2 Bristol races a year. It was just the night race in the playoffs, and it was the dirt race at the beginning of the season. Recent winners: Chris Buescher won the first one, and then Denny Hamlin won the fall of 23 in the spring of 24. Kyle Larson won the playoff race here last year, and then won here this year in May. Best average finish. Well, the 2 guys that have 2 wins are number 1 and number 2. Who would have thought? Kyle Larson, a 2.8 average finish in 5 races. That's incredible. Denny Hamlin right behind him with a 3.4 average finish. Christopher Bell not too shabby with a 6th place average finish. Chase Elliott at 6.8. And then Chris Buescher kind of a good ways back at 10.2 as somebody who has also won at this track. Most top 5s, who would have thought? The guy who has the best average finish has 5 top 5 finishes in the 5 races here. The guy with 4 top 5 finishes is Denny Hamlin, who has the second best average finish. Don't have to be a genius to figure out that, and hell, maybe why that is. Christopher Bell with 3 top 5 finishes, and then 3 drivers are tied at 2: Chase Elliott, Chris Buescher, and Ty Gibbs. When you make this top 10s, 3 drivers have a top 10 all 5 trips to Bristol: Kyle Larson, Denny Hamlin, and Christopher Bell. Chase Elliott has finished in the top 10 for the 5 races, and 4 drivers are at 3 top 10s in the 5 races with Chris Buescher, Ross Chastain, Ty Gibbs, and William Byron. Let's just do this. Obviously, my driver rankings here: Kyle Larson maybe has edged Denny Hamlin out. Denny Hamlin, though, maybe if it's high tire wear, I trust Denny a little bit more than Kyle. I'll put it this way: when you're handicapping the favorites at this race, I think Denny Hamlin and Kyle Larson are 1A, way ahead of everybody else. Christopher Bell and Chase Elliott are tier B, that second tier, but they also have a slim lead on they also have a pretty decent size, those 2, on the rest of the pack. And then you get into the rest of the favorites. I think that Hamlin and Larson are far and away the best. I think Bell and Elliott are pretty locked into the 3rd and 4th best on this track before we get into everybody else. And I think some of the stats that I just showed prove that point. Team rankings. This is tight, but I have Joe Gibbs Racing, partially because Toyota has been so good to start the playoffs, as a slight favorite over Hendrick Motorsports. I wouldn't be shocked if those 2 teams combined for all 8 of their drivers in the top 10, and definitely 8 in the top 12. I think this is going to be a Joe Gibbs Hendrick Motorsports type of day. RFK Racing, obviously, is the other team that has won here in the next gen. Chris Buescher has a decent average finish. I think Brad Keselowski will figure out how to get around Bristol. Very interested to see what Ryan Preece does as a short track guy on a high banking short track. Team Penske. Joey Logano hasn't done too well here. It's hurt him in the playoffs on multiple occasions. Ryan Blaney has some good finishes. Austin Cindric isn't great here. But I think Team Penske shows up with something because, in theory, none of their 3 drivers are safe. I think Blaney is probably okay, but Cindric and Logano with bad days could very well end up below that cut line. Team Penske needs to have a good day. I think they figure it out this week. And then maybe a dark horse here, Spire Motorsports. They've had speed here for a couple years. You remember Carson Hocevar was one of the fastest cars on track, pretty much ran in the top five all day before getting a pit road mistake that put him multiple laps down in the spring race. I think that they bring speed again. McDowell could be fast. And Justin Haley had a good run here for Spire Motorsports as well. Bristol is such a tough track, and I would like to think that the playoff drivers are going to find their way forward. I don't have 23XI on here like I normally do. They just haven't performed well at Bristol, any of the drivers. Ross Chastain is good here, but I didn't want to. But I think Spire will have a better average finishing position than Trackhouse, because I think Ross Chastain is like the only one that I trust in Trackhouse to have a good finish here this weekend. So that's why you're not seeing some of the teams you would normally see up there near the front. Driver rankings, I kind of already talked about my top four: Denny Hamlin, Kyle Larson, Christopher Bell, and Chase Elliott. So let's talk about some of the guys I think are going to be other guys I think could be fighting for top 5 and top 10s. Ryan Blaney, he's just been consistently has bought speed. Again, not always the best at Bristol, but he's not bad and has some good finishes recently. That team seems to have the speed figured out. I think Ryan Blaney shows up with something this weekend. Chase Briscoe has had some good finishes here in inferior equipment. Had a top 5 in his first Bristol race with Joe Gibbs Racing in the spring, and I think that they have found their stride since that race. Chase Briscoe with a first and second place finish to start the playoffs, and maybe Briscoe runs top 5 again. Alex Bowman has won the last 2 poles at Bristol Motor Speedway, and then he was really fast before his motor blew up in the spring. Bowman, out of all the drivers below the cut line, I think has the best chance to win this race. Look out for Alex Bowman to at least be in the front and try and point his way in, even though he's a far way back. Ross Chastain has a good amount of solid finish here, solid days. I think he has another solid day to get him into the round of 12. Ty Gibbs has had some really, really good finishes at Bristol, top 5. At times has been the fastest car on the track here. I think Ty Gibbs is fast again. Still looking for that first career win. I don't know if it's going to come at Bristol, but I think he definitely can compete near the top here. And then after his speed in the spring race and the fact that Spire has shown speed before, I'm going to put Carson Hocevar at number 10. I think Carson Hocevar might be able to play spoiler. I don't think it's crazy to think Hocevar could win a race before the end of the season. I thought that in the spring. I still think it. And then somebody I also want to mention because they're in the playoffs, Austin Dillon is good at short tracks. He wanted a short track earlier this year. Now, Richmond and Bristol are different tracks completely. But I also think, don't think, Austin Dillon had a decent run here in the spring. He has decent runs here before, despite his next-gen average finish being in the 20s. And Austin Dillon, I think, can point his way in over somebody like Austin Cindric, who has struggled here. I keep on mentioning the current playoff standings. So here you go. Here's the playoff drivers and the points that they're at. Obviously, Denny Hamlin and Chase Briscoe have locked into the next round with wins. Went ahead and also showed the points they have. Kyle Larson in third with 60. Now, you might be wondering why haven't you clinched Kyle Larson? He has 60 points, and you can't score more than 60 points in a race, so he should be okay. Not true. If Kyle Larson has a really bad day and only collects 1 point, like wrecks out early, and one of the 4 playoff drivers that are below the cut line win, he can be eliminated because he is only 49 points up on Austin Cindric. So if theoretically 4 through 12 were all to have really good points days, and 13, 14, 15, or 16 wins, Kyle Larson could miss the next round. That is an incredibly unlikely scenario, however, and he can still clinch his way in on points, I believe, before the end of the race, depending on what everybody else does. He just has to be 60 points clear by the end of the day. Or to clinch, you have to be 60 points up over the last place transfer spot. So that is possible for him to get to. Bubba Wallace, his magic number isn't that high. He's plus 50. Bubba Wallace has got to be feeling good. As Ryan Blaney plus 42, William Byron plus 39. I mean, a lot of these points battles are close, but they're kind of insignificant in the grand scheme of things. Because if you're talking about points, in my opinion, the only guys that are in real trouble with points are Chastain and Cindric, and maybe, Joey Logano. I mean, like I said, Joey Logano has had some really bad finishes here as of late, but I mean, even Joey Logano has 21 points to the good, so that would be an incredible day by Dylan or really good by somebody else. Really, I think if anybody's not going to make it on points, it's Chastain or Cindric. Chastain has good finishes here. Cindric doesn't. I think the most likely scenario here is Cindric has a bad day. Austin Dillon runs around in the back part of the top 10 and gets enough stage points and finishing points to pass Cindric. I do think Bowman is going to close the gap, but I think 35 could be too much to overcome because in reality, it's not just overcoming Cindric, it would be overcoming Dillon, who I think is also going to get points. And I don't know if Bowman's going to be 24 points better than Dillon. It is theoretically possible. And Barry's good at Bristol too. Maybe Barry can win. But I think the only two drivers below the cut line that I see potentially advancing are Dillon or Bowman, and I think it's one of them, not both. Obviously, for my pre-playoff prediction, when I was talking about who I think advances out of this round, I had Austin Cindric missing the round of 12 and Alex Bowman making it. So for that to happen, I need Alex Bowman to win and Austin Cindric to not have a good points day, which I do think is possible. Again, Alex Bowman has won the last two poles here, and he was really fast in the spring before his engine blows. So maybe if his engine doesn't blow and they bring the same speed, he will be okay. Obviously, Bowman's teammates in Kyle Larson and Chase Elliott have been fast here, but I think mostly everybody is good on points as long as they don't finish last or get only get 1 or 2 points. I think everybody should be okay. And some guys, even if they do have that, I think that they will be okay. Remember, only 10 cars get stage points. There's 16 playoff drivers, and so not everybody can get stage points. And if you're only finishing 10 spots ahead of somebody, that's only 10 points you're making up on them. So keep that in mind this weekend when thinking about points battles. It's sometimes harder than you may think to make up a 30-point gap, even with stage points. Let me know in the comments below who you think goes home this round and who you think advances. Again, I think if you're in the top 10 right now on points, I think you're feeling good. If you're in the top 8, I think you've probably clinched, just not mathematically, if that makes sense. But again, let me know in the comments. Do you think the current 12 playoff drivers that are good are going to make it in, or do you think one of the guys below the cut lines, or maybe multiple guys below the cut lines, and Austin Dillon, Shane Van Gisbergen, and Alex Bowman and Josh Berry can go from below the cut line to making it? That there is a history of that at Bristol. There usually is at least one car that finds their way to point their way in, or maybe even win their way in at Bristol. Let me know in the comments below who you think is advancing, who you think is getting eliminated after looking at this point situation. Now let's get into the power rankings going in here. Denny Hamlin and Chase Briscoe still 1-2. Chase Briscoe won the first race, finished second. The second race, I'm giving Denny Hamlin first because he just won. Those two have both been hot. This first round is kind of the type of tracks that they like. Denny Hamlin and Chase Briscoe 1-2. Ryan Blaney had decent speed, had a solid finish of fourth. Good points day. Could have had stage 2 points if Larson didn't wreck him. Kyle Larson fourth. He had really, really good speed. Arguably the fastest car, definitely fastest car at certain moments last week. Didn't realize the finish maybe he was capable of. Still had a good points day and his plus 60 on the cut line. Probably feeling pretty safe. Bubba Wallace, fourth in points right now after the reset, performing really, really well this round. Bristol is a track, though, historically he hasn't done well at. I'm very interested to see what Bubba Wallace looks like this weekend. Again, somebody that's really, really hot in the playoffs. If he can continue this stretch and him and his team continue performing the way they are, they could very well make the championship 4. Definitely can make the round of 8. Christopher Bell desperately needs a win. I think he might be a dark horse this week. Remember, he kind of chewed out his team over the radio. He's disappointed in the results. They haven't won a points-paying race since March, guys. But they're still here. They're still running well. They were fast last week. They're going to a track where they probably have the third best stats in the Cup Series in the next gen. Maybe Christopher Bell finally realizes maybe the 20 team finally realizes their potential. You could argue that the last month or two they've been the third best JGR team and that Briscoe has passed them. Let's see what Bell is capable of this weekend. Chase Elliott, another guy that's okay on points, really likes this track, and I think he's only going to gain points on the cut line this weekend. I like Chase Elliott to advance. I like Chase Elliott to fight for a top 5. Can Chase Elliott get some momentum before moving into a somewhat chaotic round of 12? William Byron, your regular season champion, kind of struggled the first 2 rounds, has gotten enough points, plus he had a points cushion. William Byron, though, needs to start building momentum because some of these guys in front of him that maybe didn't have the same regular season, the same start of the season, are kind of look better than he has over the last month or two. I know William Byron has a win in the late summer. I still think they're kind of struggling a little bit. If William Byron finally wants to win that championship, he's going to have to wake up. He's all the way down in 8th in these power rankings. Joey Logano, 9th, a solid top 5 finish for him at a track that he's probably been the best driver in the next gen, at least one of the best drivers. Him and Denny are probably 1-2 there. Joey Logano just has to avoid a disastrous day. Even if he finishes 20th, that might and should be enough to get him into the next round. But, at Bristol, nothing has been easy for them in the next gen. So even that, maybe you don't feel 100% confident. But he does have quite a few cars in between him. He has a couple of good runs in a row. Joey Logano is liable to go off at any time and decide he wants to win the championship. I don't see it this year, but still is a potential he can at least make it to the round of 8. Tyler Reddick, not a good week. I think Tyler Reddick is struggling a little bit. Tyler Reddick, man, it's like I feel like that 45 team has really good weeks, really bad weeks. They're still not getting some of the results I think they deserve. This 45 team should win a race before the end of the year. It might come in the next round. Who knows? Tyler Reddick should be advancing on points. I would be shocked if he didn't. It would take something absolutely crazy to happen for him not to. But again, momentum is so important. Proving that you can stack together good finishes is so important. They need to start stacking. Austin Cindric with a solid day. I was expecting maybe a little bit more speed from the 2 team at Gateway. They're in trouble, guys. Like, they finished a little bit better than Chastain did last week, but I trust Chastain more than I trust Cindric at Bristol. And Cindric only plus 11. It doesn't even take any stage points. Like, if Cindric has the same day he normally does, where he's around 22nd, 23rd, 24th, all it takes is Austin Dillon to have an 11th place finish and Cindric to have a 23rd, and Dillon is in the next round instead of Cindric. And Cindric is averaging like low to mid 20s finishes at Bristol in his career. I'd be very worried if I'm Cindric, and I think you probably need to find a little bit extra this weekend. Ross Chastain, he's only plus 19, but I think, an average Ross Chastain day at Bristol, getting some stage points both stages, finishing in that 6th to 10th range or that 4th to 7th range, I think will be plenty enough to get him in on points. And then the 4 guys below the cut line. Dillon, I think Dillon can ride around 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th. Maybe pick up 6 stage points and then finish 6 positions better than Austin Cindric. I think that's a very real possibility. Austin Dillon might have the best odds at advancing, just because he avoided disastrous days. You look at the 3 guys behind him. Barry has had 2 disastrous days in the playoffs, which is why he's so far back. Shane Van Gisbergen has had 2 bad days, but he's still only 19 because he had a buffer. And then Alex Bowman has had some bad luck, some bad racing in the playoffs. Alex Bowman, though, out of those 4 guys, as I keep saying, he can win this race. I'm not saying it's like a 50% chance. I'm saying maybe it's more of like a 10 to 15% chance. At absolute best, it's probably single digits. But Alex Bowman can win his race. Hendrick Motorsports brings speed to Bristol. And Alex Bowman really, really likes high banking concrete tracks. Look at his success at Dover. Maybe it'll transfer to Bristol. But I think Shane Van Gisbergen and Josh Berry are the 2 that are most confident are saying goodbye this weekend to the playoffs. It's really, can Austin Dillon point his way in, and can Alex Bowman win the race? I think everybody else should probably feel pretty safe. Thank you guys for listening and tuning in. I was going to say this episode was a little bit shorter, but I think it's going to end up being about the same. I know that the race is the Saturday night Bristol race, which is so fun and exciting and usually is really good. But I, try to get it out a little bit ahead. So this might come out a little bit late. I was trying to keep it short. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for taking time out of your days, your weeks, and your lives for listening. Find a couch this weekend. NFL here. college football here. Same thing I say all the time. Find a couch and watch sports. It's always a good excuse to relax on the weekend. Watch some NASCAR playoffs. It ought to be really fun and interesting at Bristol this weekend. Take care of yourself. Take care of your families, guys. Stay safe out there, everybody. Peace out.